5 real cult stories that will haunt you forever. First story, they let her escape, just to make sure she'd come back. It was 2016. Laura was 21 when she answered an online ad. Spiritual community seeking volunteers to live in harmony with nature. It sounded perfect. Peace, connection, purpose. What she didn't know was she was stepping into a cult where people vanished without a trace. The place was remote, a farm in Montana surrounded by thick woods. No signal, no easy roads, no neighbors. The leader, known only as Father Elias, wore white robes and claimed to hear voices of the earth. No one questioned it. Neither did Laura, until day 3. That night she heard muffled screams from the barn. She tried to ignore it, but the next morning one of the girls who arrived with her, Harper, never showed up for breakfast. They said she went back to town. But Harper's suitcase was still in her room. Laura started asking questions, but with each one she felt more eyes on her, smiles cold and wrong. One night they tried to lead her to the barn too. She refused. The next morning her door was locked from the outside, and there were drag marks on the floor. That morning, Laura looked out the window and saw something strange. Father Elias was kneeling in the field, hands covered in blood. Around him, 4 followers chanted in a circle. In the center, a mask made of animal skin. Laura backed away, shaken, but they already knew she was watching. At dinner, everyone stared at her. Same tone, same sweet words, but something in their eyes had changed, something predatory. One of the men leaned in and said, "You're about to cross over." Laura smiled, pretending not to be afraid. Inside, she was panicking. That night, she decided to escape. She hid supplies in a backpack and waited for everyone to sleep. The problem: no one slept. Even at 3 a.m., she heard footsteps upstairs, and someone whispering her name. When she finally climbed out the window, she ran without looking back. But she heard them. Voices from the trees, chanting in unison, the same song from the ritual. She ran for hours, lungs burning, until she saw lights, and collapsed. She woke up in a city hospital. The doctor said a truck driver found her on the road, dirty, scratched, dehydrated. Police went to the site, but found nothing. No house, no barn, no people, just empty land. Laura swore it was all real. She drew the cult symbol, described the rituals, but without proof the case was closed. To this day, she lives in fear, because sometimes she still hears that song and feels like someone's watching. Weeks later, Laura tried to move on until she received an envelope. No return address. Inside, a single photo. It was her, sleeping. On the wall behind her in red paint were the words, "You already crossed, you just don't remember." She ran to her room. Nothing on the wall. But behind the bed, she found a small symbol carved deep into the wood. The same cult symbol. From that day on, she never slept alone. But each morning, the carving was bigger. Laura moved to a new city, changed her number, burned everything tied to that place. But no matter where she goes, she feels it. In the bathroom mirror, in the window's reflection. There's always a shadow. As if the cult never let her leave. They just let her forget. Because the scariest thing about cults isn't when they force you to stay. It's when they make you believe you left, and you only realize when you're already back. Second story, The Brotherhood of Room 6.
1998. Kyle was a freshman at Redwood University, an old school nestled in the Colorado mountains. He was assigned to the oldest dorm on campus, 3rd floor of Block C. His room was number 6. The janitor simply said, "No one stays there for long." The room seemed normal, single bed, old wooden shelf, a scratched desk. But there was something in the smell, something damp, like mold. At night, the sounds began. Footsteps in the hallway. Kyle told other students. Some laughed. Others went silent. A senior pulled him aside and said, "If you wake up at 3:06, don't open the door. Don't look through the keyhole. Just stay in bed. That first week, Kyle barely slept. Weird dreams, whispers behind the walls, and a constant feeling of being watched. One night, he woke to a sound. 3 slow knocks on the door, 3:06 a.m. He remembered the warning, but curiosity won. He approached the door silently, knelt down, and peeked through the keyhole. On the other side, nothing. Just darkness. But as he backed away, he heard a whisper. "Now I've seen you." The next morning, something new. A symbol scratched into the wood of the door, made with a nail or knife. It looked like an eye, with a cross at the center. The janitor saw it and went pale. He just said, "That room should have stayed locked," and walked away. Kyle tried to forget. He covered the symbol with a towel, but every night it fell. And the carving got deeper, as if someone scratched it again, from inside. He began hearing breathing, from the closet. But when opened, it was always empty. In the library, he found an old book on campus legends. At the bottom of a page, one line caught his eye. Room 6, where the Brotherhood began. No further details. But that name began echoing in his mind. Brotherhood. The next week, a professor called Kyle in. A strange man, eyes too focused. He said, "You feel it, don't you? The vibration, the presence. You've been chosen, Kyle. The room saw you. And now, you see it too." That night, Kyle didn't sleep. He couldn't. There was something in the corners of the room. Shadows that didn't fade with light. A smell of wet soil. And with every blink, they seemed closer to the bed. He tried to leave the room. The doorknob was too cold to touch. When he forced it, he heard a noise from the closet, like something stepping out and walking behind him. But when he turned, he was alone. At least, he thought so. The next day, he looked for the janitor, but he had quit. Left a note. "I refuse to care for that floor again." Room 6 was never empty, and now, it's too full. Kyle began seeing figures, pale faces in windows, students no one else saw. One of them, a girl in a white dress, appeared 3 times, always standing at the end of the hallway. Still, not blinking. One day, he followed her. She entered the old women's restroom, locked for years. When Kyle pushed the door, no one was there. But in the mirror, written in steam, "You are already one of us," with the same door symbol. That's when he realized no one spoke to him anymore. It was like he no longer existed on campus. People walked past like he was a shadow, even the professors. And on the university board, his photo was no longer in the class list. Kyle tried calling his parents, no signal. Tried leaving campus, the gates were locked even during the day. He went to administration, no one recognized him. "You're new here?" they asked, but he had been there for 2 months. In his room, the whispers returned, clearer now. They spoke to him by name, but always the same phrase. "You saw the eye. Now the eye sees you." And then, the visions began. Blood on books, screams behind the wall. One night, Kyle blacked out. Woke up on the floor, barefoot, dirt on his hands. Looking in the mirror, symbols were drawn on his face. Black, ink-like markings. But when he blinked, they vanished. He searched the dorm attic, found a trapdoor above the fire stairs. Inside, burned candles, a stone altar, and an old photograph. It was room 6, but in the window, his face. From 1998. Kyle ran down, shaky breath, trembling hands. But when he reached his room, everything had changed, as if time reversed. Old furniture, no electricity. On the bed, an open Bible, with dried blood on its pages. The Bible was marked on John 9:25. I was blind and now I see. Kyle felt something behind him. He turned quickly. Nothing. But the mirror began to fog, and a word appeared. Blind. From that night on, he began losing time. Hours disappeared. He woke in strange places, the library, the empty dining hall, the forest behind campus, always with the same symbol scribbled on his hand. When he woke up, he was back in his room, but a new mirror was on the wall, old, framed in iron, and in the reflection, Kyle saw 3 versions of himself, each one with fully black eyes. He tried to break the mirror, but the glass wouldn't crack. It only distorted his face, stretched the smile, made the eyes bigger. Until for a second the reflection blinked, but Kyle didn't. The next night, he woke kneeling before the mirror, symbols drawn around in chalk, a candle lit in each corner of the room. His face was wet, tears or blood, he didn't know. In his hand, a glass eye. He tried to scream, but no voice came. In the mirror, his reflection was speaking, mouthing words, slowly. Kyle tried to read it. Now we are one. Then, the reflection turned away, but Kyle was still facing forward. He spent days without leaving the room. The campus seemed to ignore his existence. The world outside moved on. But for him, everything stopped. It was like time had frozen, and the only sound was his own breathing. Kyle began writing compulsively. Symbols, backward words, names he'd never heard. Page after page until his fingers bled. But when he woke up, the pages were blank, or already written in a different handwriting. Sometimes he heard knocks from inside the mattress. 3 times, always at 3:06. He'd get up, nothing. One night, he cut open the mattress. Inside, an old moldy journal, signed K.R. He flipped through the journal. It belonged to a student named Kevin Rhodes, missing since 1963. Identical descriptions. The eye, the mirror, the girl in white. And one final sentence, written in rage. He only needs 1 per generation. Kyle burned the journal, thought it would break the cycle. But that night, the mirror went black. No reflection, only darkness. And in it, 2 eyes, watching. The next morning, the room was empty, clean. No symbols, no mirror, no trace. But the bed was neatly made, and on it, a new journal, with Kyle carved on the cover. The dean claimed Kyle had dropped out. No note, no goodbye. But a guard swore he saw him, on the 3rd floor, in front of the mirror, with fully black eyes, smiling. 3 weeks later, a new student arrived, assigned to dorm C, 3rd floor. Room number 6. The key came in a small box with a note. The door doesn't close by itself, but once open, it never locks again. That first night he heard footsteps, then whispers. Then at 3:06, 3 knocks on the door. Curious, he peeked through the keyhole. Nothing. But when he stepped back, the symbol appeared on the wood. In the room's mirror, a word appeared at dawn. Kyle. He didn't know the name. But when he touched the glass, something cold tugged at his reflection. And for a second, he swore he saw another face. The university never confirmed the disappearances. They simply changed the room numbers. The old room 6 is now room 7. But those who live there still hear knocks and see shadows the mirror won't reflect. In the basement, there are old records, accounts of 12 students, all assigned to room 6, vanished across different decades, but each left behind a journal, and in every one, the same symbol, the same warning, the same name, the Brotherhood of the Eye. Some say it's just an urban legend. Others swear they've seen the reflections, but one thing is certain, At Redwood, no one asked for room 6, and those who stayed never asked to leave, because the mirror doesn't give back what it takes. The mirror is now stored in the university's basement, covered with a sheet, locked behind 7 doors. But every night someone hears voices there, calling for Kyle, or worse, answering in his name. And if you've ever looked into a mirror and felt like something inside moved, maybe you stared too long. Maybe the eye saw you too, and is waiting. The most dangerous thing about urban legends is you never know where they end, or if they started with you. But if, after this video, you dream of a room, number 6, don't open the door. Never look through the keyhole. Because some doors don't lead to another room. They lead to other versions of yourself. And once the mirror opens, you may not be what comes back. Or worse, it might just be the reflection that stayed. The Brotherhood of Room 6 never wanted followers. They only needed eyes. And now that they've seen you too. Don't try to break the mirror. Don't try to forget. They only need you to remember, to return. Third story. The tenant in the next room never opened the door. In 2021, Marcus moved alone into an old apartment downtown. It was way too cheap, but he didn't ask. Unemployed, he needed a quick place. The landlord was direct. Just don't try talking to the guy in 403. He's private. Marcus stayed in 404 right next door. The first night he heard noises through the wall. Footsteps. Slow movement like someone dragging themselves. Then knocks on the wall. Always in sets of 3. He thought it was just a lonely old man. But by day 3, something was off. No one ever left 403. No mail, no groceries. But every night the sounds returned. Louder, closer. One night Marcus held a glass to the wall. He heard breathing, but not human. It was irregular, harsh, and with it, something scraped the wall slowly, as if marking something on the other side. The next day, he asked the janitor about 403. The man just shook his head. That apartment shouldn't be rented. But someone's in there, I hear. That's the problem. You hear. Marcus tried to ignore it, but one night, he heard something different. Someone calling, "Market," from the wall, in his voice. But he hadn't said a word. He knocked back 3 times, same pattern, and got a response. 3 knocks, then a voice. Now we're in sync. He started having nightmares. Dreams of a mirrored room, but twisted. The walls bled, and someone was trapped on the other side, trying to escape, with their own teeth. On day 8, he woke with marks on his back. Deep scratches, hand-shaped. But he slept alone. And the door was locked from inside. No open windows, only the wall. Silent. He noticed something in his phone photos. In the background behind him, a dark silhouette, always standing by the wall, and always closer with each photo, even when he took them alone. He went to building management demanding 403's history. They said the last tenant died there in 1994, locked himself in for weeks, found with his face completely torn off. But the door, locked from the inside. That night, Marcus pressed his ear to the wall and heard someone crying, then laughing, then mimicking his own voice, perfectly. He decided to record the sounds, left his phone by the wall for an hour. When he played it, it wasn't audio. It was a message, repeated dozens of times. Let me in. Let me in. He thought about leaving, but when he packed, the doorknob turned on its own. Locked. Lights flickered, and in the wall, a crack began to open, from the inside out. Next morning, everything was normal, but the crack was still there, bigger, as if something was about to come through, and on the floor, by his bed, a tooth, human, still bloody. Marcus began hearing noises all the time, even outside the apartment, scratching sounds. On the street, at work, on the bus, as if the thing from the room had followed him, or was inside him. He went to a doctor. They said it was stress, prescribed medication, but the dreams got worse. Now he didn't just see the room, but someone's torn off face, trying to reattach the skin and failing. One night, he woke with the wall wet, touched it, blood. But when he turned on the light, it was dry, nothing, except a name scratched with fingernails. Marcus. He tried to break the wall. With a hammer, he smashed through the plaster, found something behind an opening, and inside, dozens of photos of him sleeping. Among the photos, a cassette tape, written, "Don't listen at night." He played it during the day. Distorted voices screaming his name, bones cracking, and a voice in the back. Room 403 is never empty. The cracks now spread across the ceiling, the doors, even the mirrors, and inside them. Something moved, like fingers, pushing from within. He covered the walls with newspapers, but at night, they tore by themselves, and in their place, words written in blood. The door will open, whether you want it to or not. Neighbors began disappearing. First the old man in 405, then the woman in 402. The apartments were locked, but sounds still came from inside, as if they were there, but changed. One night, the bathroom mirror shattered, with no one touching it. In the broken glass, Marcus saw his reflection smiling, even though he was crying. The reflection had black eyes. He tried to leave the building, but the elevator stopped between floors. Lights went out, and from the speaker came a distorted message. "You belong to 403. Then a scream, high, piercing. That sounded like him. When the lights came back, something was written on the ceiling. "You're late." Marcus ran down the stairs, but every floor led back to his, 404, as if the building had swallowed him, and left only one path, to the wrong side of the wall. He locked himself in the bathroom, but the light flickered, and from the drain, a hand emerged, long, deformed, scratching the floor, then another, and a head, eyeless. And the thing tried to climb out. He slammed the drain shut, locked it with a chain. Silence. For a while. But when he looked in the mirror, the creature was there, behind him. He passed out, woke up lying, on the floor of 403. He didn't know how he got in. The place was dark, moldy, covered in symbols. In the center, a chair, and in it, a body, covered with a sheet. Shaking, he pulled the sheet. The body was dry, face completely skinned, and so were the fingers. But the worst was the ring on its hand, the same one he wore, identical. The body opened, its eyes, even without eyelids, and smiled, a grin that tore the cheek, then spoke in his voice, "Now you've seen me, and that is forever." He ran to the door, locked. He kicked, punched, nothing. Then he heard knocks on the wall, 3 times. From the outside, someone answered. The wall began to open on its own, like flesh tearing, and through it entered a new figure, identical to him. Same face, same clothes, but no shadow. The copy smiled. I was getting tired. Walked past him, and out the door. Free. While Marcus stayed, trapped, in room 403. Forever. Weeks later, a new tenant moved into 404. Young, new in town. They said the previous guy disappeared. He found the place quiet, except for one thing. At 3:03 a.m., he'd hear knocks. 3. On the wall. One day, he held a cup to the wall, heard breathing, then a voice. "Can I borrow your face?" But the tone, it was his own. Just drier, more hollow. No newspapers mentioned Marcus. No report. No missing person, as if he never existed. But the building now had a new door in the hallway. No number. Locked. The janitor said no one should open it, but everyone heard the knocking, always in threes, always at 3:03, and sometimes a request. "Let me out now, just for a while." A delivery guy heard voices from the empty hallway, followed them to the locked door, pressed his ear, heard crying, but also muffled laughter, and someone knocking from the wrong side of the wood. Sometimes the wall in 404 bled, thin red lines ran down, and a phrase appeared. "Someone must stay, always." And then it vanished. Mirrors began fogging up on their own, even with no steam. And in the fog, a face, torn skin, hollow eyes, but smiling, always smiling. One day, the new tenant locked himself in the bathroom, screaming, "He got me in the dream! He wants out!" But when they broke the door, it was empty, except for a tooth, on the floor. And the knocking returned that night. 3:03, 3 knocks, and the voice. "It's still me. I'm still here. But I'm almost out." And laughed. And the mirror in 404 cracked, without cause, and the fracture formed a mouth. Slow, dragging, saying, "Who's next?" And the building was sold. The new manager sealed off 403. Welded doors, chained windows, but the noises never stopped. They just got more frequent and closer. Others began talking to themselves. One of them started copying Marcus's voice perfectly, even the laugh, the same laugh, from the room next door. A YouTuber tried spending a night there, disappeared. Only the camera was found. And the last video showed him sitting on the bed staring at the wall saying, "It's coming." No one says the apartment number anymore. They call it the locked door. But those living nearby know the time, know the IKT pattern, and learned not to answer when it calls. Each generation, the door opens on its own for someone specific, no matter how long it takes. It waits, and when it finds them, it doesn't knock, it enters. Room 403 was never empty, just rotating who stays inside and who pretends normality on the outside until it's his turn to leave and someone else takes the space. The thing that left with Marcus's face is still out there. It works, pretends, smiles, but never sleeps, because the night belongs to the other Marcus, the real one. And if you hear knocking on your wall, don't knock back, don't talk, don't record, don't reply, because just the sound is enough to mark you. Some walls are too thin and weren't made to separate. They were made to hide, but even they get tired, and when that happens, they return what you tried to ignore. The thing from 403 now has a face, a routine, a life, but what's left stays on the other side, waiting for the right moment to switch again. And an arrow pointing into the wall. 4-story, the house that was only rented by those who disappeared later. I was working as a freelance photographer, and after a rough breakup that tore more than just my heart, I needed a reset, a clean slate, a quiet place to breathe again. That's how I ended up in that house. It was small, tucked away in a distant neighborhood, and the rent was suspiciously low. Too low, but I didn't ask. I was broke and tired. The real estate agent barely spoke, only said the last tenant left without warning. When I asked about the one before that, he just said, "Same." The house looked fine at first glance. Nothing special, small rooms, peeling paint. But it was so quiet. Too quiet. That kind of stillness that doesn't comfort. It listens. The first night I noticed something strange. The kitchen cabinets had locks on the inside. I told myself I was just being paranoid. But the next few nights proved otherwise. Slow, deliberate footsteps echoed from the attic. Doors creaked open on their own. And every single cell in my body told me I wasn't alone. I installed cameras, 3 of them. One in the living room, one in the hallway, one aimed directly at the back door. The next morning, 2 of them were off. The third? It was recording me, sleeping. From just a few inches away, I spent the entire day reviewing the footage. No signs of forced entry. No visible intruder. But something was off. In some clips I was sleep-talking, not mumbling, responding to someone or something. And I didn't recognize the voice asking the questions. I took the footage to the police. They laughed. Probably sleepwalking, one officer said. Stress. Fatigue. What about the cabinet locks? Old house. They didn't file a report. But one cop pulled me aside. "That house has come up twice already this year," he said quietly. Both times, no one stayed long. Thought about leaving. Really, I did. But a part of me needed to prove I wasn't crazy. So I left a recorder running for 24 hours. No cameras, just audio. When I listened later, laughter, low, wet, and something like claws on the wooden floor. The next night I shoved a heavy cabinet against my bedroom door. I slept clutching a hammer. I woke up. The cabinet had been moved, and the hammer soaked in something thick, slick, like saliva. From that point on, the noises above me grew louder, scratching, always above my bed, always between 2 and 3 a.m. I poured white paint into a shallow pan and set it beneath the attic hatch. The next morning, the paint had footprints. In it, 3 toes, long, hooked claws. That night I heard it inside the walls, dry thuds, like nails raking through pipes. I crept into the kitchen with a knife. The refrigerator door was open. On the floor were bite marks. Bite marks shaped exactly like the palm of my hand. Each night, the house rotted a little more. The air grew heavier, sour. I ripped up one of the floorboards in the hallway and found a compartment underneath. Inside were newspaper clippings, old photos of previous tenants, all of them missing. Among the yellowed paper was a handwritten letter. "If you found this, it's too late. They don't let you leave. They just swap the host. They like those who feel fear." The signature was smeared beyond recognition. But the handwriting, it looked exactly like mine. I called my mom. The line was dead, just static. Then a soft voice. "She can't talk right now." Then a laugh. My laugh. I bought a big dog, a protector, something alive that wasn't whatever else was in that place. First night, he growled at the floor, clawed at the wood. Then he stopped, went silent, ran toward the back of the house, and never came back. When I followed, I found only the collar and blood, dried and black. There was a footprint too, 3 toes, only now they were bigger, like whatever it was, had fed and was growing. I couldn't take it anymore. I spent the next night in a cheap hotel downtown, just 1 night away. But even there, I heard them. Footsteps on the balcony. I was on the 3rd floor. The next morning I saw the curtain. 3 claw marks burned right through the fabric. I thought maybe Maybe if I destroyed what they were tied to, they'd leave me alone. I tried burning some old objects from the house. Photos, tools, pieces of furniture that didn't feel like mine. Nothing caught fire. Even gasoline wouldn't help. The flame extinguished itself, like the air refused to burn. Then on the living room wall, written in black soot, were the words, "Don't touch what's theirs." I contacted a local psychic. She didn't even visit the house, just looked at a photo I sent, and said, "That's not a house. It's a nest. Something lives there, and you're being replaced." When I came back, the place didn't feel like mine anymore. It was too clean, too empty. My clothes were gone. No scent, no photos, no dishes in the sink. Like I'd never lived there at all. In my bedroom was a suitcase, already packed. My name had been scratched out. Another name was written above it. That night, as I tried to sleep, a voice came from the floorboards. "We don't need much," it said. "Just for you to look the same. After that, we handle the rest." I ran, again. But something was different this time. No one recognized me. Not the girl at the pharmacy I always talked to. Not the cashier who used to ask about my dog. They looked at me like I was a stranger. Like my face was familiar, but not mine. Like I had been recycled. I checked my phone for proof that I existed. My old photos were corrupted. Eyes moved to the wrong places. Mouths repeated. In one picture, there were two of me. One smiling, the other just staring. Then I got an email. No sender, no subject, just one attached video. Me, walking through the house. But it wasn't my face. It was a mask. Crooked. Stitched together like flesh, trying to remember how to stay attached. The video ended on a black screen, then a message. "We are already in you. We just need you to be in us." And then, breathing sounds. So close, like something was just on the other side of the screen. Watching. Waiting. I tracked down a former resident, an older woman. When I said the address, she started crying. "That house kills who you are," she whispered, "and makes you into what it needs." "What does it need?" I asked. "That you never leave." I tried to list the house for sale, but no one ever showed. The appointments were made, but the visitors vanished. One agent called me. His voice was wrong, soft, hollow. "I went there," he said, "but you were already waiting for me." Smiling, I set up motion sensors in the yard. That same night, 5 alerts, same spot, over and over. No photos, no figures, only grass. Pressed down, human-shaped. I started sleeping during the day, watching at night. But the voices came during daylight too. Whispers from the drains, conversations between things I couldn't see. They laughed, mocked me, said my name like it was a joke. Then one morning, every mirror in the house was turned to face the wall. I didn't do it, and drawn where they used to hang was a charcoal sketch of a faceless woman. I received a box in the mail, no return address. Inside was a duplicate of my house key and a note, letters cut out from magazines. "She likes you. Stay." I was running out of time and options. I called an old friend, begged him to come help. He arrived that night and crashed on the living room couch. For a moment, it felt safe, familiar, until I woke up. He was standing in the hallway, head bowed, arms limp. "You called me," he said. "Now I can't leave," I screamed. Shouted his name. He collapsed, unconscious. When he came 2 hours later, he didn't remember anything, but on his palm, 3 deep, claw-like scars, crossed, like a symbol. He left the next day and never answered my calls again. Weeks later, I received a photo in the mail. It was him, sitting in a house that looked just like mine. Same porch, same number, but in another state. That's when I started seeing them. Figures outside the windows, and then inside. Standing still. No eyes. No face. But watching. recognizing. And the house. It started changing. New hallways appeared. Doors led to unfamiliar rooms, and the basement. It got deeper. Each night, one more step down. On the 13th step, I heard crying. My voice, begging, "Get me. Out, I'm still me. I didn't go down." But that night, the staircase climbed on its own. I tried leaving by car again, just drive anywhere. But the GPS wouldn't cooperate. No matter where I was, it only displayed one destination. Home. Even in the middle of the highway. It never changed, just home. As I drove, the streetlights turned off one by one behind me. Radios from nearby houses turned on by themselves, tuned into static at first, then into my voice. "You're hurting me," it whispered. "Come back. Now." I tried sleeping somewhere else. Didn't matter. I dreamed of myself. But hollow. An empty mold. And something stepping into it. Slowly. Filling it. Becoming me. When I woke up, I was back in the house. Even after escaping. Even with people who saw me leave. The house brought me back each time. Faster. Easier. Until one day, I stopped trying. I couldn't remember what day it was. Names escaped me. Even my own voice sounded distant, like I was repeating someone else's memory. The house didn't chase me out, it absorbed me, then began making a new version. Locals say the house is never truly empty. There's always someone there. Even if no one moves in. Even if no one sees a car in the driveway. There's always a silhouette in the window, waiting for the next switch. The agency doesn't list it anymore, but the address still shows up, sometimes in obscure classifieds, price too good to be real, with a simple tagline, perfect for those looking to disappear. People who visit say the same thing. They feel watched, but not threatened. They feel like they've been there before, as if they left something behind. Sometimes, something whispers through the pipes, from the walls, from the closet in the back room. "Thanks for staying. We needed new faces. Yours fits well." If you ever find a place that feels too perfect, rent too low, no neighbors, a history no one can explain, don't go in. Don't sign anything because maybe the house is already chosen. I thought the house wanted to kill me, but I was wrong. It wants you to live its life with its soul, with its eyes. It wants to keep existing inside someone. And now, it lives inside me. Sometimes people say they've seen me, at stores, at gas stations, smiling, talking, normal. But something's off. The way I walk, the way I blink, the way I smile. Like someone learning how to act like a person again. If you ever run into me, don't look too long, don't say my name. And whatever you do, don't tell me you remember me. Because if I remember you, the house will too. And once it does, it will find you. It always does. Because the truth is, the house doesn't trap you, it doesn't chase, it waits, it invites, and when you finally step inside, it doesn't close the door, it holds it open, long enough for you to forget who you were and remember who it needs you to be. Now I don't try to leave anymore. There's nothing left to escape. It's not my house. Not anymore. It never was. And if you're still listening, still curious, still wondering if this story is real, maybe that's how it begins for you. 5 story. The camp that erased people from their memory. In the summer of 2014, I took a job as a school camp counselor deep in the interior of Mato Grosso. I had no experience with kids, no real preparation, and frankly, no idea what I was getting into. I just needed something, a change, a distraction. The odd. Camp was isolated, no phone signal, just dense forest, natural lagoons, and cracked wooden cabins that smelled like time forgot them. Even the owners seemed unsure of why the place still existed. The moment I arrived, something felt off. My cabin smelled like rotting wood. The roof creaked at night, as if it were breathing with the trees. Birds wouldn't land on the nearby branches. I told myself it was just nature, maybe even beautiful in its wildness, until one of the kids looked up at me and asked, "Have you ever dreamed about the tree man?" I laughed. No one else did. By the third night, a girl went missing. Her name was Elisa. I remembered her clearly. Her braids, her nervous smile, the bright blue backpack she carried like a shield. We searched for hours. I waded through thorns and branches, calling her name until my voice broke. When the firefighters showed up, I expected urgency, panic, questions, but no one remembered her. Not the other kids, not the teachers, not even... The list of names had any entry between E and F, and her bed, untouched, perfectly made, like no one had ever slept there. I went straight to the camp coordinator. She stared at me with a strange pity. "Careful with the sun, Andre, it messes with your head out here." "But I saw her," I said, trembling. "She sat at dinner. She liked extra ketchup. You saw her." "Who?" Her voice was calm, empty. "That night." I tried writing Elisa's name down on a piece of paper. The ink disappeared within minutes. I searched the school records. No trace. Tried calling the number I vaguely remembered her mother writing on the sign-in form. No such number existed. It was like Elisa had never been born. And then the next night, another child vanished, a boy named Raphael. And again, I was the only one who seemed to notice. The others smiled and joked like nothing had changed. I wrote names down. I took photos on my phone. I documented everything I could. By morning, the files were blank, the photos empty, names erased. I went down to the lake, hoping to clear my head. Found footprints by the shore, but they weren't human. Too many toes, spaced like something walked on all fours. The water itself moved strangely, rippling when there was no wind. When I tried to call for help from the camp phone, I didn't get a dial tone, just a pre-recorded message that played like a cruel joke. "You've reached Camp Andorra, where no one stays forever." Then came the sound of children laughing, too perfect, too polished, like a recording of laughter played backward. Next morning, something had changed again. There were fewer bunk beds. I could have sworn there were 12 before now. Just 9. The space itself was adjusting, shrinking. And still, no one noticed. I stayed up that night, sat by the door with a flashlight clenched in my hand. At exactly 3:17 a.m., I heard someone run past. Barefoot, short. A whisper dragged through the air, "Help me." But the voice didn't come from the woods, it came from below, as if buried alive. In the morning, I demanded to see the roster again. The coordinator handed me the same list. 16 names, but I remembered 19. I pointed to the gap. "There are 3 missing." She tilted her head, smiled politely. "No, Andre." "And the girl with the braids, Elisa?" "What girl?" I packed my bag. I was done. I couldn't explain what was happening, but I knew I couldn't stay. I started walking, planning to hitch, a ride from anyone, anything that would take me out of there. But every path I took curved back to camp, even after walking for hours, even after marking the trail with rocks. The camp was always waiting, and each time I returned, the forest looked thinner, like even the trees were forgetting how to stand. At dinner, I noticed something I hadn't before. All the kids were eating at the exact same time. Forks rose together, chewed together, stopped, together, rehearsed. I tested it, dropped my spoon loudly. No one flinched. But one boy across the room dropped his spoon, too. He looked at me. His eyes were hollow, like he was waiting for my next move. That night, I heard voices outside the cabin, but they weren't speaking Portuguese. It sounded like children imitating language, almost like echoes of speech they didn't understand, and then repeated like a chant, "We eat what's forgotten." I ran to the lake hoping to find something, anything that made sense. The water was still, too still. I threw a rock, no splash, no ripple, nothing. The surface just absorbed it, like the water wasn't water anymore. Back at the cafeteria, all the kids had supposedly gone to sleep, but when I walked in, they were sitting up. Every single one of them. Eyes open, unmoving. Their breathing synchronized like a choir. It wasn't sleep. It wasn't life either. One of them turned his head slightly and whispered, "You're next." I reached out to one boy, wanted to wake him, shake him, do something. The moment I touched his shoulder, he collapsed sideways. Cold, no pulse. Like a doll. I backed away in horror. But by morning, they were all fine, eating, playing, laughing, and no one remembered a thing. That day, I grabbed a notebook and started writing everything down. Dates, names, times, details. I didn't trust my memory anymore. I tucked it beneath my mattress, desperate to anchor myself to something real. The next morning, the notebook was still there, but all the pages were filled. Every single one. Same sentence. Too late already. Stormed into the admin office and tried using the emergency radio. It worked, but the only active channel played one thing. Footsteps. Squishy, slow, like someone trudging through wet mud, and breathing. But not human. It was the kind of breathing that didn't involve a nose. That night I locked myself in the pantry. I stayed there for 2 days. Pitch black. I heard them. Children giggling. Scratching outside the door. But then, scratching from inside too. I pressed my back to the wall and didn't move. Didn't sleep. When I finally came out, something had changed again. The buildings were older. The signs more faded. Even the trees seemed younger, thinner. It felt like I had stepped back in time. Or worse, like I had been forgotten with everything else. I wandered into the infirmary and found a rusted metal box. Inside were wristbands, child-sized. Each had a name. Most of them were crossed out. One of them had my name. That's when it started, happening. I forgot how old I was. Forgot my last name. Forgot my mom's phone number. Even how I got to the camp in the first place. My own thoughts began slipping, like water running through a cracked bowl. I looked down at my arms one night and saw scars I didn't recognize, faint lines, some recent, some ancient. I found the coordinator again. She was sitting cross-legged on the floor of the teacher's lounge, drawing circles in chalk, her nose bleeding. She whispered, "They never stop. They hunger for names." Then she opened her mouth and spit out baby teeth. That same night I woke up to sounds on the roof. I stepped outside. No one there. But in the dirt, name tags, all of them. The children's, covered in wet mud. All the names erased. The next day the school director showed up unannounced. I ran to her like a lifeline. Told her everything. She listened, arms folded, nodded. Then she smiled and said, "We've had this type of case before." She paused. Since 1971. Later, I found a locked cabinet in the back room. Inside, folders, disappearance reports, but the photos, all smudged, blurred faces, like even the paper rejected the memories, and each case ended the same. No record. Camp felt different the next week. More crowded, new kids, new counselors, but I didn't recognize any of them. Not a single face. When I asked, they just said, "You're the replacement." But no one ever said whose place I was taking. I couldn't take it anymore. I left everything behind, ran straight into the forest, no plan, no compass, just instinct. I walked for hours, cutting through vines and tall grass, bruising my hands on thorns, and finally, a gate, but not the same one I entered. It looked older, rusted, sealed with chains. A sign hung crooked on the gate, Experimental Consciousness Containment Center. I stared at it, blinking hard. Not a camp, a containment site. Inside the reception cabin, I found a filing cabinet. I pulled it open and froze, a folder, my face on it, but not the face I saw in mirrors. It looked older, faded, hollow, birth date altered. Job title scribbled in red pen. Test subject, memory type 2. I grabbed more files. Pages and pages, hundreds of names. Most crossed out. But mine appeared 3 times, each with a different arrival date. How many times had I been here? How many times had I forgotten? A radio on the desk turned on by itself, an old crackling recording. A woman's voice said calmly, "The experiment will restart in 5 minutes. Erase the current structure. Load the next host." I bolted toward the dormitory. The kids weren't kids anymore. Their faces had gone blank. No eyes, no mouths, just smooth skin like unfinished dolls. They walked in a perfect circle around the room, arms at their sides, chanting, "Andre doesn't want to forget. Andre doesn't want to forget." Desperate, I grabbed my phone and tried to film myself. I spoke into the lens fast, like it would vanish if I stopped. "My name is Andre Salis. I'm 28. I'm trapped in a place that erases people." I hit play. The screen showed only trees and a soft laugh in the background. That sounded just like mine. On the last night, I woke up somewhere new. No beds, no windows, just a single door. Behind it, voices, dozens of them, mixed, layered, repeating my name over and over like a broken prayer. I opened the door. Outside, a dry, endless field, barren. And far in the distance, I saw myself, same build, same face, but wearing different clothes and no shadow beneath him. I ran, shouted. When I reached him, he was still, stone cold, a statue, my face carved in it. At its base, a plaque, Lot 1974, integration failure. I turned around. Hundreds more surrounded me, statues with vague, familiar features. Some were children, others looked like counselors, all frozen, all bearing the same words, successfully forgotten. I dropped to my knees. There was no more running, no more remembering, no more me. After that day, I stopped fighting. Or maybe I just forgot how to fight. What day was it anyway? I couldn't tell anymore. I couldn't remember the last face I loved, the last place I lived, or even what color my mother's eyes were. All I had left was the rhythm of this place, the routine. Wake up, listen to the silence, follow the rules. The voices still came, always whispering, always searching for someone new. The camp never closed. Every season brought new counselors, new students. Always fewer at the end than at the start. But no one complains, because no one remembers they should. Occasionally, someone comes back, a former monitor, a past staff member. They step onto the grounds with distant eyes, and then they just stare at the lake for hours. The lake never dries, even in drought, even when the forest around it burns. They say it's not made of water. It's made of stories that were buried, people who were dissolved, identities that turned into fog and legend. And if you ever take your child to a school camp, look at the map, smell the air, watch for the stillness, because sometimes the forgotten get lonely, and they ask for company. Sometimes they beg for it. There's a rumor. If you dream of a dry field, a lake that makes no sound, and faceless children walking in circles, it means someone is trying to remember you. But they can't. They've already been erased too deep. The last recording I ever made, a voice. Memo I don't even remember speaking, still exists. Somewhere. It says, "If you're hearing this, don't say my name. Don't try to remember." That's how they come back. The camp isn't on any map, but somehow everyone knows someone who's been, even if they can't say when, even if they swear it's just a dream, even if they never came back quite the same. And if you forget this story tomorrow, if everything I've said slips from your mind like smoke, know this. They were here. They passed by and chose not to take you. Not yet. But if, in the middle of the night, you hear footsteps in mud, or a thin voice calling a name that no one remembers, don't answer, don't follow, because if you remember them, they'll remember you.